always feel kind of bad putting poetry in a little free library because people don't like poetry. Welcome back. So today I'm going to be doing something that I've never done on this channel before, which is an unhaul. I've always kind of found that term to be strange, but that's what people call it on YouTube. I'm going to be going through my books. I'm going to be getting rid of some books today. Now, you probably don't know that these books that I always sit in front of that are organized by color, these are all novels. I have other bookshelves. Today I'm going to be going through my poetry collections. And I've been wanting to do this for a long time. You know, I'm not someone who's really invested in having an extensive book collection. I would rather have a well-curated and thoughtful, small collection of books, especially when it comes to poetry. Because poetry is the one genre that I do actually reread. If I like a poetry collection, I will read it like 10 times. In part because they're so short, and in part because they're so complex, and I really think, you know, poetry warrants being read and reread. And you know, I'm always reading as a writer, but especially when it comes to poetry, and especially lately, I'm really trying to understand collections. You know, how does a well put together poetry collection work, you know, from beginning to end? And so I would rather have a small collection of poetry books that I love, that I know I'm going to read and reread, that I can pick up off the shelf and remember and tell you something about, than have, you know, just like everything that I've ever bought or come into contact with. I can't film in front of my poetry bookshelf because lighting is bad over there, but I can show you a picture of it, and perhaps I will show you what it looks like when I put the books back on after having identified which ones are going to go to Goodwill or a little free library or whatever. I always feel kind of bad putting poetry in a little free library because people don't like poetry. What can you do? Oh, and finally, how am I deciding what I'm keeping and what I'm not? I mean, I've bought these books over several years. Many of them I haven't read in a long time. Luckily, I almost always, as of like 2015, 2014, many years now, I have been making sure to rate pretty much everything I read on Goodreads for moments like this. So I'm just gonna look at the scores. If it's a 1-star book, get rid of it. If it's a 2-star book, probably get rid of it. If it's a 3-star book, even, warrants, you know, some thinking. Maybe I'll open it up and read a few things and see how I feel. Let's get started. We're gonna start with some anthologies. Oh, here are the anthologies. They're heavy. Okay, if I were being honest with myself right off the bat, I would probably just get rid of all of these. You know, when it comes to like clothes, I'm usually pretty good at looking at an item and just saying like, listen, you don't wear this, so get rid of it. And if the standard is you don't read it, get rid of it, then really I would probably be getting rid of all of these. I'm not going to get rid of all of them. I just know that I just don't really reach for anthologies. I would always rather read many small collections than kind of dive into one poet for as long as it would take to read an anthology. Like, for example, I have this Allen Ginsberg anthology, which I think I'm going to keep because, you know, I dream of one day saying, you know what, I'm just going to spend a month or two, just me and Allen, reading all of the things he ever wrote. But, you know, hasn't happened yet. I've had this book for many years. Will I ever read it? Maybe I'll do this again. Excuse me. I love the idea of reading it. I love the idea of spending this length of time with a single poet, but I just never reach for it. I'm going to keep this one. And maybe I'll do this again, this same exercise in a year or two. And if I haven't read it yet, it's time to go bye-bye. But for now, you know, I like it. You know, the version of me in my head that doesn't exist, you know, will have read this at some point. The Essential Roomie. I have read this. It didn't blow my mind. I liked it. I don't see myself reaching it for it again. And also, this was borrowed from a friend, so I should give it back. So that's going in the no pile. Sleeping on the Wing. I've talked about this before. Definitely keeping this. It is an anthology, but of multiple poets. It's not just one like collected works. It's, you know, it spans from Walt Whitman to John Ashbery, everybody in between. It's a nice survey, short, you know, portable. I like it. Oh boy, now we're getting into more of the like who I am versus who I want to be. Am I ever gonna read my Whitman reader? Probably not. But am I even a poet, you know, if I don't read the classics? You don't need to own stuff this old, right? It's in the public domain, right? You know, I like Song of Myself. We all like Song of Myself. Lovely poem. Do I need my own print copy of it? Given that you can just pull it up on your phone, on the computer at any time. And only half of this is poetry, the other half is, you know, stuff about autobiographical, biographical stuff, you know, literary criticism. Let's just be honest. Let's be honest. No. Very similarly, Yeats. Got a Yeats collection. Listen, I read it. I did. I was an English major. Look at all the, you know, things are underlined, words are circled, essays were written. Am I ever going to crack the spine again? No. Final anthology. You know, I've been calling these anthologies, but I guess some of them are just like, you know, the collected works of a single individual. They're not multiple poets. These are the collected poems of Amy Clampett. And I have cracked this spine a time or two. I haven't ever gotten through the whole thing. I liked it. I wasn't over the moon about it. I think I'm going to keep it in the same vein as the Ginsberg book and say, like, you've got a timeline on this baby. If you don't read it in the next couple of years, it's gone. So to recap, we started with 6 and we're down to 3. We were keeping Allen Ginsberg, Amy Clampett, and Sleeping on the Wing. We are getting rid of Rumi, Yeats, and Whitman. Can you tell I just don't really like old stuff? Okay, now we're getting into the individual collections. This is where I'm probably going to need to look a lot of things up on Goodreads if I don't remember them. This is the most recent poetry collection I've read. I remember learning how to dive. It was pretty good. I'm going to keep it. I really like Laura Kosciuszki. Laura Kosciuszki. Don't know how to say her name. I really like her. I really like this one. It's called Space and Chains. Was not as crazy about Wild Brides, but I think I'm gonna keep it. Maybe it just needs a second chance. I only read it once, and I do like this poet, so there you go. Star Lake by Arta Collins. Arta Collins was like a one-hit wonder. She won the Yale Younger Poets Prize like 10, 15 years ago or something with whatever the collection was called, which was, you know, one of my favorite poetry collections for a long time, and she didn't write anything for forever. It felt like, you know, like a favorite band getting back together. She just released this recently. It's called Star Lake. It was pretty good. Very challenging, not the easiest thing, but definitely worth a reread. Monk Eats an Afro by Yolanda Wisher. This is a beautiful collection, definitely keeping this. Here we get into my Terrence Hayes. Love Terrence Hayes. We got Lighthead. We got American Sonnets for My Past and Future Assassin. This is a book of just sonnets. My favorite collection of his is not here. Wind in a Box. I don't think I own it anymore. You know, part of this process of getting rid of things is also bringing up the idea that maybe I should be buying things, which, you know, is not great for the wallet, but in terms of my goal of having a curated collection of things that I know I love and like, I should probably buy Wind in a Box. Spellbound by Sarah Miller. From what I remember, some beautiful nature poems. This is from Burnside Review Press. I believe that I got this because I submitted a chapbook or a collection to them and did not win, and either they sent me the winning collection or they sent me something else. A lot of the time contests will let you toss in another $5, $10 and they'll give you something in return, or they'll give you the winning collection, which always kind of stings when you get it in the mail and you're like, oh, you beat me, but this one was really good. So She by Saul Williams. Really like it, pretty accessible. I've definitely read it more than once, definitely keeping this. Not a lot of no's yet. I think these were somewhat organized where I had my 2 shelves. I think the top shelf was like top shelf, and we're gonna get to the bottom shelf later. Lana Del Rey's poetry collection. As I said in my video about this book, it is not very good. It's okay, it's darn right fine, but it is a beautiful aesthetic object, and I'm gonna keep it. It's got some nice, lovely photos and art in it. Clampdown by Jennifer Moxley. I do not remember this. I think I remember being like very meh about it. Let's look it up on Goodreads. I gave it 3 stars. It was so not helpful. I might have to just make a 3-star pile, and depending on how many there are, either keep them or not keep them. Autobiography of Red by Anne Carson. You know, I did not like this. Realistically, I'm never gonna open this again. It's like, I want to keep it for the most pretentious reasons, that like, everybody loves Anne Carson, you know, but from what I remember, this was like a myth retelling in verse that was also maybe queer, from what I remember. I'm sorry, I don't care for myth retellings very much. This is a maybe. We'll get back to this. We'll come back to this. Interior with Sudden Joy by Brenda Shaughnessy. I definitely bought this based on the name. I thought it was a beautiful title for a collection. I found it very pretentious and, you know, inaccessible. Then like I'm looking at it, I'm just kind of flipping through. I kind of want to give it a second chance. Maybe we'll make this my second chance pile. Gogol in Rome by Katya Kapovich. I read this in college. I really liked it. It was one of the first poetry collections that I really enjoyed, so I'm definitely keeping it. In the Field Between Us by Molly McCulley-Brown and Susanna Nevison. I think I made a video about this. I might have taken it down if it didn't get very many views. I'm a big fan of Molly McCulley-Brown. I definitely have a video up about Virginia State Colony for Epileptics and Feeble-Minded. You can tell that I've read it many times. We got little sticky notes and everything. Definitely keeping both of these. Okay, we are in our Heather Crystal zone. The trees, the trees. The Difficult Farm, Heliopause. Who is making her covers? How does she get such beautiful covers? Heather Crystal wins the award for most beautiful book covers, which is, you know, winning the award for just being, I guess, like really lucky publisher-wise. I like her work a lot. Definitely keeping these. Same deal. We got Kaveh Akbar, one of my favorite poets. I've got, I think, everything that he's published. I've got it, so. Paige Lewis. Did I put them next to Kaveh because they're dating? Maybe. Or married. I don't know. They're a couple. So I put them next to each other on the shelf so they can, you know, cuddle or whatever. This book is pretty good. I'm definitely keeping it. Terminal Human Velocity, Christina Olson. I read a chapbook of hers that I thought was really amazing, and then I bought this, which wasn't as amazing, but I would like to read it again, so let's keep it. Obviously, we're keeping all our Topaz Winters. Obviously. And speaking of Topaz, this is a Half Mystic Press collection. This is a collection by the same author. They're both pretty good. Let's keep them. The lovely, the wonderful Jennifer Espinosa. I like that both of her poetry collections, at least that I have here, are purple. Do you think she did that on purpose? This is a chapbook. It's called Certain Sadness. This is a chapbook by someone who I consulted for. I believe that I'm thanked in this book. I'm definitely keeping this. If you send me a book that I helped you publish, obviously I'm keeping it. I think I might just have to get rid of the 3-star books. I think in my world, you know, it's not that hard to get 3 stars for me on a poetry collection. So yeah, this is a 3-star. We're getting rid of the 3 stars. Passiflora. Crowd Surfing with God. This was a Half Mystic Press book. Night Song by Ever Jones. I can't remember why I bought this. Oh, Sundress Publications. I think I was interested in them as a press, so I bought one of their books, and it was super good. People are writing really good poetry these days, you know? It's like, it's hard. It's hard on my bank account. It's hard on my time. It's hard on my bookshelves. You guys gotta stop. Museum of Accidents by Rachel Zucker. This is one of my favorite poetry collections of all time. I just bought it. I think I originally read it from a library, library book, and so I bought my own version of it. It's very long lines, as you can see by the shape of the book. Just so good, so accessible, so emotionally powerful. It's about, a lot about motherhood and, can I say depression, perhaps, or just, not being very happy. And also this, I forgot how much this talks about like Jewish identity, which was interesting. It's just a really, really beautiful book. Finally, I found a 2-star. Okay, finally. My Fault by Leora Fridman. I'm sorry to these people whose books I'm getting rid of. I honestly can't remember anything about them. I can't remember what I didn't like, but wasn't crazy about this. Finally, one that I can definitely get rid of. This is another 3-star, and as we said, I think I'm actually getting rid of the 3 stars even. Everyone here, Cecily Iddings. Can't tell you anything about it. If you're not memorable, you're not staying. That's the thing. Speaking of which, Awe by Dorothy Lasky. I kind of, sort of hate this book, but I think I'm going to keep it because, like, it makes me feel something. I don't really understand. I don't want to sound mean. I don't really understand what people like about her work. I feel like I'm missing something. It gives me that feeling where I'm reading a poem and I'm like, am I missing something? Does everyone else get something that I don't get? Why? Like, what? But it does so, like, and some of these poems make me laugh. I don't know if they're supposed to be funny. Maybe they're supposed to be funny and I'm just being mean. But, like, it's memorable. So, it's staying. Ooh, another 2-star, Winter Sex. Getting rid of it. Depths by Susan Howe. I feel really bad because I think this was a gift and the person who gave it to me might be watching. I'm sorry. I think I'm gonna get rid of this. I read it and it was just a little too experimental for me. Maybe kind of, again, gave me that feeling of like, am I missing something? Am I not smart enough for this book? Not a feeling I enjoy. So, we had our time together. but I'm not going to read it again. Silencer. I must have read this a long time ago, but I gave it 4 stars, so let's keep it. Haphazard, 4 stars. Okay, I'm also going to make a pile of things to reread, because it's one thing for me to be like, oh, Kava Akbar, Jennifer Espinosa, Topaz Winters, people I read over and over again. But apparently we've got some 4-star books in here that I have definitely only read once and couldn't tell you a single thing about. So I think it's time to reread them, maybe reassess, see how I feel, and yeah. If it's 4 stars, I think I should be reading it more than once. And if I don't want to read it more than once, I don't want it on my shelves. Oh, definitely getting rid of this. This was a random buy, At the Autopsy of Vasilij Nijinsky by Bridget Lowe. I don't know, picked it up at a used bookstore. Found it very meh, so bye-bye. 29th year. I took this out of the library, liked it so much, bought a copy, read it a second time. I think I read it too soon because like it blew my mind the first time, and then I read it like a month later and I was like, eh. But in 6 months, in a year, I'm sure I'll pick it up again. You know, it's right there in the title, the 29th year. I found it very relatable from like an age and stage of life standpoint. And yeah, this is a keeper. The Space Between by Jill Jupin. This is from Plan B Press, which published my chapbook, and it's really beautiful. And, you know, I love to find things that are maybe a little lesser known, but still amazing, so absolutely keeping this. The Ghost Soldiers by James Tate. So James Tate is obviously a pretty famous poet. The Ghost Soldiers is of his absurd prose poetry variety. If you like absurdity, if you like prose poetry, if you like humor, if you like poems about couples not understanding each other, then definitely read this. I'm gonna keep it. Okay, this is called Melanin Sun Blind Spots by Danae Young. Danae reached out to me and asked me if I would make a video review. She also said that she's been studying under Jennifer Espinosa, who is one of my favorite poets ever. And as I pretty much always do, I said, I'm sorry, I can't really make a full video review, but I'll buy a copy in this case because you have a connection to a poet that I like and I want to support your work and whatever. But I can give it a shout out. It was really, really excellent. If you like personal poetry, if you like poetry that explores family, if you like poetry that is kind of experimental yet totally accessible, go for it. Scattered at Sea by Amy Gersler. I'm pretty sure I bought this because of the beautiful cover and the interesting title, and just found it, again, very forgettable. This is probably a really boring video because all I have to say about the books I'm keeping is I love it, and all I have to say about the books I'm getting rid of is I can't remember it, so it must not be that good. But this one just didn't really do it for me. We have a Louise Glück collection, Vita Nova. I should read more Louise Glück. I really like her. Really like what I've read. Haven't read that much. I know that she's probably written a ton of poetry books because she's been famous for a while. So I should look into more. There Are Things More Beautiful Than Beyonce by Morgan Parker. This was good. It was accessible. It was good. I liked it. Kept seeing the cover, very like in your face, and wanted to read it for a long time, finally did. And I liked it. You can see why it's front facing in so many stores at the moment. Not Me, Eileen Miles. I have, you know, fond memories of this. This is a college book, one of the ones that's stuck around, one of the ones that I kept all these years. You know, I'm not crazy about Eileen Miles, but I do like that at least this collection, it's got the super, super, super short lines. I just don't see that many people doing that. It's interesting, and again, I just have like fond memories of all of the poetry that I encountered when I was like 19, 20, 21, just discovering poetry, just discovering that I liked poetry, so this will always have a special place in my heart for that reason. Edna St. Vincent Millay. Okay. It's good. It's good. You know, as far as older poetry goes, as far as metered rhyming poetry goes, but it's just not my thing. I just realistically think I'm never going to open it again. And here's a case of like, okay, I know people don't really like poetry, but someone would probably love to have this cute little collection that's in really good shape, you know, no stray marks, haven't written it in it or anything like that. So like, I should give this, I should let this have a new home. That is not with me. We have Hilary Gravendick, The Soluble Hour, and Harm. This is a really sad story. This poet passed away fairly young. A lot of the poems are about illness, chronic illness, mortality, and nature, and they're really, really beautiful, and keeping these. Richard Sykin, Crush. This was recommended to me by someone commenting on my YouTube channel, and I honestly don't always take those recommendations I can't read everything, you know, but this one intrigued me and I do really, really love it. It was a Yale Younger Poets winner, and I don't know, I find it really, like, is edgy the word? This is definitely going in the reread pile because apparently I gave it 4 stars, but I remember absolutely nothing about it, so I'm gonna read it again. Here we have, quite possibly, my favorite poet of all time, who almost no one has ever heard of. Anna Moshavakis wrote, "I have not been able to get through to everyone. They and we will get in trouble for this, and you and 3 others are approaching a lake." You can tell by the titles of the collections that they are straightforward, they are sentences, they are simple. Are they even poetry, one might ask? I don't know. Only you can tell. Buy her books. Tell me what you think. Would love for her to be more famous than she is, because she is, in fact, my favorite poet of all time. Is that true anymore? I don't know. Topaz and Anna are really kind of like duking it out for first place, but really can't recommend these enough, especially if you are not necessarily into poetry that plays with syntax so much that it's confusing and you just kind of want to read some sentences. Well, You and 3 Others Are Approaching Lake. This one's my favorite. Start with this. We have If the Tabloids Are True, Who Are You? By Matea Harvey. This, much like the Lana Del Rey book, my books are falling all over the place. This is another beautiful aesthetic object. It has a ton of artwork in it. That is really, really interesting. And Matea Harvey, if you haven't read her work, is pretty weird, pretty strange, pretty surreal, but, you know, not too inaccessible either. This, to me, feels as close as any book has gotten to giving me the feeling of walking through a museum. Obviously there are art books, and so perhaps, you know, and I don't really read those, so there's probably plenty of books out there that can give you that feeling. But if you like poetry, and you like museums, and you want to kind of experience both, you want to feel like you're walking through an art museum, and you want to pause with some poems, I do definitely recommend this, only if you have a taste for the strange and surreal. Modern Life is another Matea Harvey. I could afford to give this a reread. I haven't read it in a really, really long time, so I'm going to put it in the reread pile. Calendars by Annie Finch. I believe I got this for like $1 or out of a free pile or something, and it just really didn't exactly knock my socks off, so that's a no. School Among the Ruins by Adrienne Rich. You know, surprisingly, it says poems 2000 to 2004. Believe it or not, I kind of want to get rid of this. I thought it was okay. I really love Adrienne Rich. I've read, but I think her work varies from collection to collection, and this was just like not her best. It pains me, but I think I'm gonna get rid of this. Bath by Jen Silverman, another really small press, thin volume that I read recently and liked, very visceral, good stuff. Country of Glass by Sarah Katz. Okay, I feel like I'm doing a horrible job of telling you about these books, other than saying they're good, they're bad, I can't remember. So let's just read one of the reviews here. Sarah Katz possesses the keen eye of a miniaturist. Her image making is close cropped, uncanny, refined to an economy of grace, and unnerving sharpness. As familiar folktales, one feels in these poems a sense of wonder, of amusement, and of terror. Desire and disease haunt these tableaux of memory, history, and dream. All right. Does that sound good to you? Go ahead and read this. Life on Mars by Tracy K. Smith. I mean, she has won the Pulitzer, so it's pretty good. And, you know, who doesn't love reading poems about space? Bad, Chelsea Minnis. Okay, Chelsea Minnis. I've read a couple of her collections, and I read this in a poetry class in college, and everybody hated it. It was so interesting. And, you know, bad, like the collection, it's like it's very meta. There's a lot of poems about poetry, a lot of breaking of rules, a lot of calling her own work bad. It seems really easy. You read these poems, you're like, ugh, I could have written that. A kid could write that. Anybody could write that, you know, and I think that's why people didn't like it. But, you know, it's like the Dorothy Lasky book, like, at least it gives me something. At least I feel something. It's memorable. You know, even if it kind of makes me feel weird or upset, like that's better than nothing. You know, so many poetry books, like it takes a lot to give someone an emotional reaction, and yeah, she sticks with you. This isn't my favorite of hers. I've read some others that were better, but I think I'm definitely gonna keep this. It just, again, fond memories of college writing classes, and God, it just made everyone so angry. It was so interesting. And you can tell that the professor really liked her, and she was like, well, don't you think that it's like well crafted at least? And everyone's like, no. So, bad. It's intriguing. Shiner by Maggie Nilsson. I bought this fairly recently, read it once, don't think I'm ever going to read it again. This is an easy no. I like Maggie Nilsson. I read Argonauts. It was good, it was memorable. Poetry, not so much. So here we're getting into a new problem, which is that I've got these books from college that I marked up extensively. I made notes in the margins and I underlined things and I circled things, and like, I get why I did it. I had to write essays about some of these poems and stuff, but like, I never want to open them again. So here I have Undersleep by Daniel Hall. I believe I really, really liked this book, but I've never read it since, because who wants to read a book where some of the poems have been scanned? Literally, I scanned the stressed and unstressed syllables. You know, I think I'm gonna put this in a separate pile because I've been wanting to do an exercise lately that will ruin this book even more. I've been wanting to take some highlighters and take a poetry collection and highlight the different parts of speech to see, you know, I think that poets often do strange things where they're using like a ton of nouns and like it's, you know, maybe differs from prose in some way, and I've been wanting to do something like that, but I don't want to ruin one of my books. Well, this book is sufficiently ruined already. The question is, do I buy a new copy of it? Because I do remember liking it. I think I'm going to put it on a list to possibly buy in the future, and for now I'm going to put it in a pile to just like destroy. I also have Strange Relations by Daniel Hall. I don't remember as much about it. Gonna put it in the reread pile because I'm pretty sure I like him, but can't really recall this one so much. This is taking forever. I know. We're getting to the end. We're getting close to the end. Dawn Scher, Squandermania, another one that I've kind of ruined by writing stuff in, but I haven't written as much in it, so I'm gonna keep it and I'm gonna put it in the reread pile. And if I don't like it as much as I remember, I'll get rid of it. Leaving Saturn, same deal. I read this too long ago to really tell you how I felt, so it's going in the reread pile. Lie Down 2 by Leslie Lewis. I am keeping this even though I have underlined it quite a bit. It's another one of those college books. Very straightforward on a syntax level. You know, easy sentences, but strange. This one's called My Sabbatical. I keep insects. You can have one of my bees. I breathe for you, bake for you, weep for you. I'm right-handed and I like my coffee on my right. You're like drawing from memory. You're a bunch of leather-backed nonsense I'm in for. I am not yearning so badly, which doesn't mean I don't love you madly. I really like this collection. It's got some strange logic and just juxtaposition of ideas, but with very simple language, which, to be honest, is kind of my writing style as well. So maybe this is where I got it from. Lisa Robertson, Magenta Soul Whip. This is another one that, like, I kind of hate, but in a way that is like intriguing. I think when you reread it, it's just doing some like wild stuff with language. It's pretty hard to understand, but like there are some beautiful phrases, you know? Like, I don't know. Because it is a known fact, the wounded fall towards the point. Because of mute desire, you are the teak pavilion. Like, what are you talking about, Lisa? But I don't know, isn't it kind of fun to read poetry where you have no idea what they're talking about and you can just kind of it is like what you make of it. Plus, you know, the title, Magenta Soul Whip. I think that tells you everything you need to know. Do you like that kind of a phrase in poetry? Then read this. If that kind of a phrase makes you mad, like what in the world is a magenta soul whip, then don't read this, you know? But I'm keeping it and I'm rereading it. If Not Winter. This is Sappho. This is fragments of Sappho collected and, what's the word? Edited and arranged in various ways by Anne Carson. It's an absolutely beautiful poetry collection. Of course I'm keeping this. We're getting to the end. Monkey Time by Philip Nikolaev. Here's the deal. One of my college professors, I believe, lent this to me. Not gave to me, lent to me. So in the Marie Kondo world, does it spark joy? No, it sparks guilt. Every time I see it, I feel bad, and I feel even worse because I did not like it. I did not like it. It was lent to me. It would be very weird to give it back this many years later. I think I should just get rid of it. I think, you know, he's probably bought his own copy by now. I'm sorry I didn't give it back. I actually can't remember. I'm not sure if it was clear whether it was loaned to me or given to me. But either way, I read it. I found it extremely pretentious. I did not like it, and I'm finally going to get rid of it now. Wow, this took a long time. Okay. I'm keeping most of them. Here's the books that I'm going to reread because apparently I liked them, but I can't really remember much about them, or I just kind of want to re-experience them because it's been a while. Here are all the books that I'm going to get rid of, and I'm proud of myself. I think being very honest. There are some books in here that I think, you know, are like classics or well-respected collections, but I just know that I'm never going to read them again. So there's no reason for them to sit on my shelves, literally collecting dust. I've gotten so much dust all over my desk, or all over my dress today. And so time to say goodbye. And finally, here's the book that I'm going to just destroy with highlighters to see the different parts of speech, which maybe I will show you. Maybe you would be interested to see what that looks like as a project. Finally, I am going to take you along as I reorganize my bookshelf, and we'll see what it looks like, you know, visually with all of those gone. There you have it. We've got my top shelf books, or my top shelf books. Those are, although I guess, plus the Ginsberg that I'm going to theoretically read eventually, and then I've got a bunch of books down here that I want to reread, and I've made a lot of space for acquiring new and awesome books. Okay, bye.